and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. In recent years, India has made a place for itself in space exploration. It has a space program that is poised to go where no other country has ever gone before, to the south of the moon. The unexplored side of the moon is embedded with an estimated 1 million metric tons of helium-3. If harnessed, this waste-free nuclear energy could well meet global energy demand for the next 250 years. Space agency ISRO will launch a rover to the south of the moon in October, when it will look for the presence of water and helium-3 isotope deposits. In today's edition of In Depth, let's understand the mission in greater detail, the challenges it faces, and its significance for India's space program. Scientists have found the surface of the moon contains elements that can be very useful to us. One of these elements is helium-3, a chemical ingredient that can meet our energy needs. Scientists across the world want to bring helium-3 to Earth, and India is at the forefront of this mission.
From ancient times, mankind has speculated about what lies on the surface of the moon. 2nd century Greek writer of Syrian origin, Lucian, mentioned a king, army and settlements on the moon in his novel True History. He also compared fictional life on the moon and Earth. H.G. Wells, in his book The First Man in the Moon, described the presence of aliens. Baron Munchausen, on the other hand, spoke about the presence of trees and plants in the Improbable Adventures. The full stop to all these speculations came after the first person landed on the moon's surface on 20th July 1969, when he found only dust, pits and desert.
After a lull of about 14 years, again it started around 1986 that people started sending mission to moon. So in space sciences, usually people kind of call it as a second honeymoon. Okay, I mean, we have suddenly found the moon is more interesting now. There are three reasons. One, now our equipments are better. I mean, we have better facilities. We can do a much more minute and interesting studies about the moon. How did moon form? The second is minerals on moon. I mean, if you find most of the missions, the recent missions, there will be mineralogy mappers. I mean, basically remote sensing equipments, which will try to find out what is the mineral composition of moon. Okay. Third is very specifically, people are looking forward to this particular material in moon called helium-3.
Though science couldn't find life on the moon, it did find all the elements necessary to support life. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 astronauts landed on the moon's surface. Several unmanned missions came back with soil and stone samples from the moon's surface. It was the Apollo 17 mission in 1972 that claimed that helium-3 was present on the moon. Helium-3 is the cleanest option for atomic energy, but it is present in very small quantities on Earth. According to NASA, we can get approximately 10 lakh metric tons of helium-3 from moon. If it is mined in sufficient quantity and brought to Earth at economical rates, then it can be a viable option for nuclear fuel.
We need to look at the fact that the ISRO program is a public funded program. It's an expensive program. So what are the cost benefits of this sort of a research? That on the one hand. On the other hand, regardless of what the material cost benefits are, this should be an opportunity to create a public debate about the scientific implications of such a mission, the technological implications, what might be the benefits.
All public and private companies around the world are showing interest in mining helium-3 on the moon. This also includes Indian Space Agency ISRO. ISRO is preparing to send a rover and an investigation mission in October this year to explore helium-3 in the southern pole of the moon. This mission will cost around 800 crore rupees. If ISRO does discover helium-3, it will be a huge breakthrough. But it will still be a challenge to bring helium-3 on Earth and bring it in use. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Bringing helium-3 to Earth won't be an easy task. And even if it is brought, there are obstacles before the material can be used. These hurdles include the logistics of collection and delivery back to Earth, and also building fusion power plants to convert the material into energy.
The surface of the moon has been absorbing helium-3 emitted by the sun for over 1 billion years. India is set to launch a lunar rover in October to look for signs of water and a nuclear fuel called helium-3 in the moon's crust, according to a media report. In fact, Indian Space Research Organisation or ISRO has plans to mine helium-3 from the moon to help manage India's energy needs. India's intention of mining the moon for helium-3 was first reported early last year, following comments by ISRO professor Shivthanu Pillai. Those reports were initially squashed due to a supposed misquoting of Pillai, but the space agency is now clearly pursuing that goal.
If you look at it roughly, if there are 1 million helium atoms, roughly about 300 to 400 of them would be helium-3. In moon, the percentage might be slightly more. But still, you may have to separate out this helium-4, natural helium, from the helium-3. I mean, that separation process you need to take. In school, you would have studied different ways of separation techniques, sedimentation, filtration. You may have to use all kinds of things to separate out this helium-3 from rest of the materials on the moon, extract it out in that sense, and then get a pure helium-3 to bring it back to Earth. So mostly, my view is that this is going to happen with some kind of a futurist technology like 3D printing, etc. would be used to construct your own machinery in the surface of the moon, because sending machinery from Earth is not going to be that easy. And mostly it may be operated by robotic means rather than human beings going there and actually operating these equipments.
However, obtaining helium-3 from the lunar soil will not be easy. One of the main challenges that scientists might face to bring helium-3 on Earth is the lack of information as to how it will behave on Earth, since Moon's atmosphere is different from Earth's atmosphere. Apart from this, helium-3 fusion is an untested technology, and India still doesn't have such reactors where it can be tested for energy. In short, the mission has a long way to go before it becomes a reality.
If it is an industrial use, etc., I do not have the sufficient technical knowledge to talk where in industry you are going to use and what purpose you are bringing it. But one thing, scientifically, helium is a very important element, because as you know, hydrogen is the lightest element, and next is helium, and helium is found in two isotopes, isotope 3 or isotope 4. And their properties can become very different at low temperature. So in terms of experimental scientific work, having a bigger source of these two elements will be of benefit. But there also comes a question, can the same amount not be got from Earth sources?
India is excited about the mission because it is in line with the clean energy mission that it hopes to achieve by 2022. The government also wants to reduce the dependence on hydrocarbons by at least 10% by 2022. And if ISRO's mission is successful, we can reduce fuel imports as well as carbon emissions. Many countries and companies are keen on exploiting helium-3 that scientists hope could be used in a kind of nuclear fusion which doesn't create radioactive waste. If this pans out, the isotope could provide safer nuclear energy over the coming centuries. So far, China has been the only country this century to put a rover on the moon, partly in order to scout out helium-3 deposits. Now India is following suit. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
At a time when the world's fuel sources are depleting, helium-3 has emerged as a future energy source, one that could meet the ever-increasing energy demands. Let's take a look at what is helium-3 and what it can do.
Helium is one of the basic chemical elements. In its natural state, it is a colorless gas with low density and low chemical reactivity. It is probably best known as a non-flammable substitute for hydrogen to provide the lift in blimps and balloons. There is also a non-radioactive isotope of helium called helium-3. Its existence was first proposed in 1934 by the Australian nuclear physicist Mark Oliphant. Helium-3 was originally thought to be a radioactive isotope until it was found in samples of natural helium, both from terrestrial atmosphere and natural gas wells. On Earth, the presence of helium-3 is rare. It is sought after for use in nuclear fusion research and is abundant in moon soil.
Helium-3 can be used as a fuel for producing energy through a process called nuclear fusion. If you look at the nuclear facilities in India, let's say Kalpakkam or other places, what we do is that we use heavy elements like uranium and break it into two. When we break it into two, some energy is released. So this is called fission. So these are all called as fission energy. Okay, in the fusion energy, you are going to combine two helium-3 and make a new element, and in this combination, some energy will be released. Okay, this technology is not yet matured. Right now, it's in research and development stage. There is an international collaboration to develop this technology of nuclear fusion. It's in France. It's called ITER. I mean, that center is called as ITER, and India is part of that collaboration.
Helium-3 is a light isotope of helium having 2 protons but only 1 neutron and an atomic mass of 3. There has been much speculation about the possibility of helium-3 as a future energy source. The most important feature of helium-3 is that it can be used in a nuclear fusion process. Unlike most other nuclear fusion reactions, the fusion of helium-3 atoms releases large amounts of energy without causing the surrounding material to become radioactive. However, the temperatures required to achieve helium-3 fusion reactions are much higher than in traditional fusion reactions. Because of its non-radioactive property, helium-3 does not produce atomic waste.
Helium, and helium is found in 2 isotopes, isotope 3 or isotope 4. Having a bigger source of these 2 elements will be of benefit. But there also comes a question, can the same amount not be got from Earth sources? Because ultimately the source is going to be the same, radioactive decay. Okay, because whatever is formed primordially, all that cannot be held because of a gravitational field. So finally, how much source is there and how much source is there here, whether it's easier mine there than here, whether you liquefy and bring them here, all these economics have to be dealt with before you justify the economic viability of the program.
The key to increasing the efficiency of the nuclear fuel was the discovery of adding in trace amounts of helium-3, a stable isotope of helium that only has 1 neutron instead of 2. The amount of helium found in various natural gas deposits varies from almost 0 to as high as 4% by volume. Only about 1/10 of the working natural gas fields have economically viable concentrations of helium greater than 0.4%. Helium can also be produced by liquefying air and separating component gases. Production costs for this method are high, and the amount of helium contained in air is very low. Although this method is often used to produce other gases like nitrogen and oxygen, it is rarely used to produce helium. Helium is helping scientists go past the limits of their knowledge about physics and chemistry, thanks to its convenient ability to become a superfluid with relative ease. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
India's efforts to send a mission to the moon and mining are not new. After India's very successful first mission to the moon, Chandrayaan-1, scientists are now gearing up for India's second stint with the moon, Chandrayaan-2. In this report, let's take a look at India's mission to moon, Chandrayaan.
Indian scientists have long been planning a mission to the moon. The idea was first mooted at the Indian Science Academy meeting in 1999 under the Indian Scientific Mission. The proposal was discussed once again at the Astronautical Society of India in the year 2000. The recommendations at this forum led ISRO to form a National Lunar Mission Task Force, following which the government approved ISRO's proposal of its first mission to moon, Chandrayaan-1, in November 2003. With the successful launch of Chandrayaan on 22nd October 2008, India gained entry into the elite club of nations that had successfully completed this feat. The main objectives of the mission were to detect the presence of water on the moon, provide high-resolution chemical and mineral imaging of the entire surface of the moon, and prepare a 3D atlas of both the far and near sides of the moon. After the completion of all the major mission objectives, Chandrayaan-1's orbit was raised to 200 kilometers in May 2009. Chandrayaan operated for 312 days as opposed to the intended 2 years, but the mission achieved 95% of its planned objectives.
India's moon program started way back in 2008-2009 when India did the first mission to the moon called Chandrayaan-1. This mission lasted almost for 9 to 10 months. It is known that almost 95% of the stated objectives of India's first mission, moon mission, were completed by that mission. Now, amongst those stated objectives, one of the major objectives was to study the moon surface and understand the mineralogical distribution over the moon surface. So from that perspective, India had launched 2 sensors on it. One was a moon mineralogy mapper and one was the X-ray spectrometry telescope.
ISRO is now geared up for its latest mission to the moon called Chandrayaan-2 in October this year. Under this lunar mission, ISRO will for the first time attempt to land a rover on the moon's south pole. The complex mission will comprise of an orbiter, lander and rover. Chandrayaan-2's tests are under progress and the spacecraft will be launched by GSLV Mk2. The mission will encourage new experiments by the use and testing of new technologies.
Started with Chandrayaan-1, which reached moon and had an orbiter and also a small crasher. You can't exactly call it as a lander because it did not land soft land, but it was thrown like a rock which fell on the moon. Okay, when it fell, it blew up some dust. We also studied those dust to see compositions, etc. And you can also get a ground truth, whether your instruments are functioning well.
After reaching the moon's orbit, the lander will get detached from the orbiter and do a soft landing near the south pole of the moon. The 6-wheeled rover fixed within the lander will then get detached and move on the lunar surface. The rover will then send data and images of the lunar surface back to the Earth through the orbiter. At the time of the launch, Chandrayaan-2 will weigh 3,250 kilograms. The totally indigenous mission will cost an estimated amount of 8,000 crore rupees. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
It's not just the moon that the scientists are exploring as an option. Scientists are also sending probes to other planets. Recently, NASA sent InSight Mars Lander, a stationary probe designed to study the interior of the red planet. It is quite different from NASA's Opportunity, Spirit and Curiosity rovers. Its goal is to learn more about the Martian composition and also study how tectonically active Mars is. Six years after last landing on Mars, NASA sent a robotic geologist to dig deeper than ever before to take the planet's temperature. The InSight robotic lander has been designed to study in depth the inner space of Mars, its crust, mantle and core. The Mars mission is part of NASA's Discovery program for highly focused science missions that asks critical questions in solar system science. Studying the interior structure of Mars will provide answers to key questions about the early formation of rocky planets in our inner solar system, Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars, more than 4 billion years ago, as well as rocky exoplanets. It is the first Mars mission to carry a seismograph to detect Mars quakes.
रोबोटिक जियोलॉजिस्ट कुछ नहीं है, एक रोबोटिक आर्म है ये जो इनसाइट स्पेसक्राफ्ट है ये करीब 700 किलो वज़न का है, 3 इसके के पैर होंगे इसके, तो ये एक जगह पे स्थिर रहेगा। ये वहाँ से इसके रोबोटिक आर्म निकलेंगे जो कि अलग अलग तरीके के एक्सपेरिमेंट करेंगे। रोबोटिक एक आर्म होगा जो कि खोदेगा नीचे तक 5 मीटर नीचे तक खोदेगा। एक अलग इंस्ट्रूमेंट होगा जो हीट नापेगा। तो इस तरह के रोबोटिक जियोलॉजिस्ट इसको इसीलिए कहते हैं।
According to NASA, InSight has two major scientific goals. The first is to examine the interior of the red planet, what it is made of, and what processes occur. The lander will provide information on the size and composition of the Martian core, crust, and mantle. It will also show how warm the interior is and how much heat is still flowing through. The second goal is to learn if Mars is tectonically active, including where seismic activity is located and how frequently meteorites slam into its surface. InSight has 3 instruments that are designed to look at the deep interior of Mars and learn about the planet's geological activity, warmth, and elements of its evolution. The seismic experiment for interior structure will detect seismic waves from meteorite impacts, magma movements inside the planet, or Mars quakes. The Heat Flow and Physical Properties Probe, or HB3, which will burrow about 5 meters or 16 feet into the surface. Its main job is to sense heat underground. The Rotation and Interior Structure Experiment, or RISE, will aim to provide more information about the composition of the Martian core. It will keep careful track of where the lander is located. The composition of the core would influence the degree and type of oscillation Mars experiences. InSight also has a robotic arm that is more than 7 feet or 2.4 meters long. This arm will place the seismometer and heat flow probe on the surface for their measurements. The arm also features a camera that will take colored 3D views of the landing site, instrument placement, and activities. Besides, InSight also has sensors to provide information on the weather, as well as any changes in the local magnetic field nearby the lander.
Any country for that matter will be keen to know that is there any life outside the Earth's surface also. So that is basically the quest to know more about is there life there on the surface of the Mars, because there are indications that there is a methane available, and that gives a great indication that yes, if the methane is there, maybe thousands of years ago there was certain amount of life on the Mars.
The solar and battery-powered lander is designed to operate for 26 Earth months or 1 year on Mars, a period in which it is expected to pick up as many as 100 quakes. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And that's it from us in this edition of In Depth. You can also watch our episodes online on YouTube and Twitter and share your feedback. Thanks for your time.